All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Milton School Committee meeting of December 1st, 2021. I hope that you're all well this evening, and happy Hanukkah to our community members and fellow school committee members who are celebrating these days. The first item of this evening is to approve the agenda or to make any changes or additions or subtractions. Does anyone have any changes, additions, or subtractions to the agenda? Oh, Dr. Carroll, yes.
I think we can skip the policy subcommittee report tonight. We should have a few things to discuss at our next meeting, hopefully.
Okay, great. I had noted that you would probably have several policies at the next meeting as well. So that's good to know. Anyone else? All right, wonderful. So then may I have an motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, all right. All in favor, you can just raise your, yeah, okay, second, okay. All in favor, just raise your hand. All right, great, wonderful. All right, without further ado, I will turn things over to the superintendent. Good evening, Superintendent Jett. Good evening, Superintendent Sheehan and Dexter.
Thank you, Chair Eberhardt, and thank those who attended tonight's session. It wasn't on the agenda, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the letter that was sent home earlier today to all Milton Public Schools families. Unfortunately, it came to our attention yesterday that there was an inappropriate comment, a racial slur that was uttered in the home of one of the Pierce Middle School students during a sleepover. And in investigating that situation, Dr. Fish, myself in communication with him yesterday afternoon, me communicating with Chair Eberhardt and giving the school committee a brief update on that. Also knowing that we still had to follow up with parents to make sure that we had the proper context and information so we wouldn't have to retract anything. I'm well aware of what happened in Quincy on November 12th, in Braintree on November 15th, as I shared with the folks. And one of the things that led to the frustration in those communities was the lack of an immediate, or what they deemed as an immediate response from the students. I want to let people know in less than 24 hours, an investigation was launched from the time in which it came to the attention of Milton Public Schools administration. In 24 hours, investigation was initiated. Parents were called or emailed. Meetings were held this morning. There was team meetings with students to kind of give them the update, to kind of dispel any rumors, things like that, to touch and base. There was a meeting that was held with faculty and staff after school. Milton Police was notified in the event that there was further, if anything, any new developments went on. Staff were alerted to monitor students in between classes, lunches, to make sure that students, one, knew that the staff were aware of what was going on. But I want to be clear with folks, it is very difficult for Milton Public Schools faculty, staff, and administration to really have control over what's happening outside of school. But I want to make it abundantly clear to everyone and give you some reassurance. When it comes to our attention, we are going to follow up on it immediately. And as I said in the letter, Milton Public Schools is not a place for hate or hateful rhetoric, speech, language, or actions. And we're going to take those things very seriously. To give you the context, and I am going to share with you a little bit of the context of what happened. In the privacy of someone's home, on a FaceTime with another student, going back and forth, a younger student, very young, asked what was going on, and someone said the N-word. The young student replied, "What does that mean?" And another person stated what the N-word meant. Unfortunately, that situation was videotaped, and whether it was intended as a joke or not, it was uploaded on some sort of social media, which I believe was Snapchat. Someone screenshot it and it got spread. Now, the comment itself, inappropriate. The behavior of uploading something like that, inappropriate. I understand the pain, the frustration, and the hurt of our students who are subjected to that. But we can't allow people to take justice in their own hand. So I want to say we don't want students approaching students and getting themselves in trouble by threatening or making any comments to a student. Let the faculty and staff do their job and handle the situation. That was done. Parents were called. I will say to you, every parent, from my understanding, it was called and spoken to that may have been involved, was just as disappointed in some cases as we were, very cooperative. I had the opportunity to speak with them. We also have Senior Director Somali Prak Martin that's already reached out to Bill Fish, who's going to be working with the Pierce Middle School team and staff to support our students. There's no doubt people were angered, hurt, disappointed, dismayed, confused, and want to know answers. But I want to remind folks, we're talking about middle school students who are minors, and we have to protect their confidentiality just like a courtroom would do. They don't put those names out there. Now, we're not putting those names out there, but unfortunately, the names are out there, and that's something that we have to work with. And so as much as we're concerned about the victims, we also got to make sure that we recognize that we're dealing with young students. We got to make sure everyone is safe involved. And as I said in my letter, these unfortunate things happened in the past. It happened recently, but we deal with it when it comes up. And we're going to continue to deal with it. What we can't do, and we recognize that a little more than 16 months ago, we can't rush to judgment and put stuff out and act inappropriately, because sometimes that could do more harm. So the letter went out when we tried to get as much information as we could. And we're going to continue with the investigation, because just because we think we have something, we may not have unearthed everything. And that is something that the parents were informed about. That is something that Bill Fish and myself have had a conversation about. And my expectation is Dr. Fish had that conversation with his staff. That is something I had a conversation with Somali Prak Martin about this evening. And I want to discuss the reporting situation. Anyone viewing this, if there's ever a situation that you are concerned about, there is an app or a link on individual school websites. All you do is press on that, you file a report. It is time-stamped. It asks for the details. You could do it anonymously. You could state your name. It asks for descriptors. Soon as that person hits submit, that information goes to the administrators of that building via email with all of those details in it, and that launches an investigation. Now, we also got to be mindful of what time these complaints or incidents are reported. If students are not in the school, it is very difficult sometimes to track students down with the number of activities that families may be engaged in after school. And we also want to make sure that we do our due diligence of having those conversations in person, not via email, not via Zoom or over the phone. I'm a firm believer sometimes having conversations, in addition to the words that are spoken, it is the body language that tells whether or not a person is remorseful or recognizing his or her actions. All of those things are very important to us as educators. It is our job to educate students when they cross the line. So it's very easy to dole out consequences. We want to focus on discipline, which is the education. So hopefully these incidents don't repeat themselves. I am saddened that I had to send an email like that to the community. I am optimistic that I think that with the work that we have done, the work that we will continue to do, we will get over this. And I want to make it very, very clear to every parent. And that's why I encourage all families to have those conversations with their students this evening, to talk about your expectations. You could have various opinions about certain groups or different identities, that you're entitled to have your own opinion. Once it's spoken, once it's written, once it's drawn or shared, now everybody else that is exposed to it owns it. And it's up to their interpretation of how that incident impacted them. And as you can see, this incident, whether a prank or anything like that, whatever you want to call it, is taken very seriously, and it disrupted the Milton Public Schools community and the Milton community as a whole. Given what we are going through, not only as a state, a region, as a country, we need to be mindful of the words that come out of our mouth, the actions that we engage in, especially on social media. And it's important that families understand that once it's out there, and you have very little control over it. because it moves very quickly. So my final statement is, a couple of students made a mistake. And we're going to work with those students to make sure that they understand their impact on them. We're going to make sure students understand what it means about a civil rights violation and how it can impact them not only now, but post-secondary opportunities and potential job opportunities. We're going to work with our students, all of our students, to make sure that that is something that they're aware of. But it's important for us to think about it and say, we're talking about a middle school student. Are we willing to condemn a person for life over that, or we're willing to talk about restorative justice? And that's what we've been talking about. And that's what we are going to do. If anyone has any questions, concerns, or comments, I ask people not to engage in speculation or fan the rumor mill. If you have a question, if it's something that I can answer, I will be happy to answer it. It does no good to anyone involved, directly involved or on a peripheral, to speculate and go to social media and add fuel to the fire. And so I wanted to share with folks, we will continue with our investigation, and we will provide an update if we find out additional information. But it was important before it got out with misinformation that we try to do our best to clarify it with as many facts as possible. So I'm open to any questions. And again, Chair Eberhardt, members of the school committee, I did not want to stop the meeting with this. I do have some good news, a lot of great news, but I think it was important to address this situation straightforward.
Sure. Of course, Superintendent Jett, thank you very much for your update and for the letter that you shared with the school community and also with the school committee. I don't know if any of our school committee members would like to ask any questions or ask Superintendent Jett any additional questions this evening. Feel free to raise your hand or anything at all that you'd like to ask him about the letter or the conversations. Yes, Member Rosteni.
I have a couple of questions. First, starting with how many students were involved? And second, it was brought to my attention that there was a presentation at the Pierce Middle School. And I'd love to have an idea of what was shared with the students around the issue.
Thank you for that question. First and foremost, as many of you probably know, I was on a call with Massachusetts Partnership for the Diversity in Education at a job fair today. Bill Fish, the principal, and his team spoke with the students. That is something I would encourage Bill Fish to talk to Bill Fish about because he talked a little bit about the situation. I can't sit before you, Member Ross Denny, and tell you the questions that came up. But the whole goal was try to let students know that the adults were aware of it, the adults are handling it, and we have some work to do moving forward. How many kids are involved? I can't even speculate because just like we have a copy of the video, I don't know how many times it was shared. And that is another reason why it was shared with the Milton with the Milton Police Department as well. And then finally, I do know there was some direct students that were involved. There was two students in a home speaking on FaceTime with a student in another home. That student happened to have a younger sibling. And then it was uploaded and it was shared. And I don't know how many people it was shared with. Now, I want to remind folks also, this happened 2 weeks ago. No one reported to us. I want to give credit to one of our 8th grade teachers who saw an interaction during the class and brought that to attention of a guidance counselor. The guidance counselor further investigated that, and that's how some of that stuff came to light. So I want to be clear, and I know we talk about the reporting system. A reporting system is only as good as the people who access that reporting system. And any time it comes in, whether it's verbally, email, by phone, or the reporting system itself, we're going to take action and follow through to the best of our ability. So, and we still have work to do. And so the reason why I can't give you a direct number, because I don't know how many people who are sitting in silence who saw it, who may be offended by it, but don't want to, out of fear of retaliation or whatever the case may be. But that's the work we do. And I want to emphasize this. Relationships are very important between the faculty, staff, and our students. By having good relationships with our students and making sure that every single student in the Milton Public School has a good relationship with at least one person, that could be that outlet for that student to share with them something very heavy, something like this. And so where it doesn't have to take 2 weeks. And as I alluded to what happened in Quincy, and I don't want to speak about that, I just share with you what I know that was reported, that they had a situation that was out there for about a year. This was out there for less than 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays ago, came to our attention yesterday. In 24 hours, here we are. I'm not happy about it, but I'm pleased with the swift actions that some of our administrators took. We did try to reach out to some families, and as I mentioned in a quick update to the school committee, some people were very difficult to reach or hard to reach, but those folks were spoken to today. And that's what we wanted to make sure that we've done. And we don't want to rush, because we also want to be careful that we're not putting ourselves or the district in a compromising situation by moving forward on innuendos or speculation or rumors. So it did happen. I'm not denying it. I'm saddened by it. I'm disappointed by it, but I'm also optimistic we're going to work through this and get through this. And I just ask for the community support, their patience, their understanding on all accounts, understanding that that comment hurt a lot of people, students and staff, without question. That comment resurrected a lot of feelings that people probably feel across the country. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, no, you did answer my question. It was only 3 students in the video. Like, how something's disseminated, neither you nor I have any control over. But in terms of restorative justice, I think it might be beneficial for the school community, maybe not today, to understand what does it look like to engage in restorative justice in this circumstance for those 3 students. Those students, in spite of what they said and given their age, they have relationships with students that could have been offended by that. And I think students find trouble navigating those relationships. And in 8th grade, I don't expect that many of them are going to be running to the counselor's office to say, my friend was the one who said this. What do I do? I don't think the schools necessarily have to be the panacea for all things in society, but this is a challenging relationship to navigate. And it just brings me back to last summer when Ms. Jarrett's, the disciplinary action that was taken against her made me question my relationship with the superintendent and whether or not there was any consistency in how people were treated. But we're at a different place in the district. We do have people trained in restorative justice. There have been expectations shared with students. It's the what's next for those kids as they go to school every day alongside this child that made a comment, whether innocently or not. And those relationships, like I don't expect this student to know how to navigate that. How do you say sorry to someone you've known for, the better part of 8 years?
So
that is a Black student. And I don't know how they're going to repair that relationship, but I believe I know the children involved, and I know they have friends that are students of color that are at a loss as to what to do. Like, how do I approach my friend now? I know as a parent, it's my job to figure some of this out, but any advice or support that can come out of the district from people who have this expertise would be very helpful.
So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm glad you brought up what happened on June 5th, 2020, because that's why I think it was very important. So people might question why something didn't go out last night. And I think it's very important to get the proper context before you put something out. That's one thing. To your point, Member Ross Denny, I did have a conversation with some of the parents involved in the video. And the correction, in the video, there's one student, but there's another student in the room and another student voice in another child that you can hear. And that student's face in the video that we saw is not even visible. The issue or the situation I had, and I've already had this conversation with Bill Fish and his 2 vice principals, we got to do some healing with those who are impacted by it, but we also got to do some healing in protection of the student who was the perpetrator in this situation. And I should say students, because uploading something without someone's consent is a concern, and saying something like that is a concern. And so part of that is really working with that student. I've already had this conversation because I understand that when that student returns to school, when that student returns to school, there are going to be kids who very innocently might approach that student and ask, why did you do it? What were you thinking? Some students might still be angry. That's the restorative justice. That's the student circle, especially with those immediate friends who are really dismayed by that comment, particularly if they are of African-American consent. But I think we owe it to all parties involved, the victims, the targets, the aggressor or perpetrator, however you want to label it. We owe it to all of them, because when everything's said and done, they're all Milton Public School students, and they're still trying to navigate a world that is really complicated. And by no means am I excusing the behavior. The comment was totally inappropriate. The actions, totally inappropriate. And so we're going to work with that. And it all depends also, Beverly, because some students might come in different places, but that's the work that Somali Prakma and the principals, the guidance counselors, adjustment counselors will have to do.
Yes, Dr. Carroll.
Thank you. Thank you for the update, Superintendent Jett. And I actually had raised my hand before Member Rasteni brought up the restorative justice connection. And that was one of the main things that I was going to, I guess, ask about as a lingering question. I don't expect the answers to be clear yet tonight. But just to reemphasize that point, we've talked about restorative justice. We've heard about that specifically from the Pierce administration. We've seen it in our budget. We're investing in that as an approach and a practice. And I think we've heard and understood research why that's an important direction for us to be moving in as a community. So I do look forward as the situation unfolds and, as it's addressed in an ongoing way, to seeing how this situation calls for and can be addressed through the restorative justice that we have been beginning to shift towards as a community. I think that's just so important, as you were saying, Bev. And I don't think anybody, I haven't heard anyone suggest that there should have been a communication out to the community last night. I don't think the sense of urgency to sort of have a system and a process in place and a way of addressing the incident, I don't think necessarily means a rush to communicate before all the information is known, or certainly before, as you were saying, the people closest to the situation have had a chance to be contacted and spoken with. So I respect that you and Principal Fish and your teams have went through that process, which is so important. And thank you for, making sure that everybody who needed to have that opportunity for a conversation could have that. I think just for anybody listening to this conversation, or who, may go about their daily lives in Milton, either not thinking about the reasons why we need as a community to maintain our steadfast spoken commitment, sort of in progress commitment to becoming an anti-racist school district. For anybody who thinks, oh, this is not something that we need to be focusing on, why are we talking about this? For people who don't have this as lived experience as a resident or a family in Milton Public Schools, I hope this is just an unfortunate reminder for all of us that this is why Milton Public Schools became an anti-racist school district, a year and a half ago, in terms of a verbal commitment to that, and why we have been working towards that in our budget, in our policy, ever since. And there's slow progress that has been made. In October, as a school committee, we recommitted to a resolution on anti-racism that really, I think, doubles down in a sense on why we care about this and why it's vital to our future as a district. And so, I think, as sad as I am that this has happened, I share everybody's disappointment, all the, eloquently stated Superintendent Jett in terms of why this is so problematic. And also, let's just take this as an opportunity together to, keep going. because we all know that we're really very early on in our journey as a district to confronting and addressing our needs in this area. We have a lot of work to do as outlined by Cambridge Education in the School Quality Review report. You know, let's be reminded that this unacceptable kind of behavior by young students who need to learn from this experience, and people who've watched it need to learn from it. The fact that it took 2 weeks for this to come to light, sure, Thanksgiving, the break and everything, but you know, I appreciate the student who, you know, in that class said something that led to this being brought to light. If that student hadn't done that, you know, maybe it would be another 2 weeks, or as in the case of other communities, a year, who knows? So anyway, I'm sorry to go on, but, you know, I think clearly we have a lot of work to do. Thank you, Superintendent Jett and Principal Fish and others who have spent, I'm sure, a busy 24 hours working on this. And I look forward to the future updates as we get more information and we understand what we're doing about this, not just in the kind of crisis management mode, but in the actual responding mode. So thanks.
Yeah, and anyone else? No, well, thank you, Superintendent Jett. You know, for all my love for words, sometimes words fail me. I, as a person who thinks a lot about what I say and how I talk to other people, my heart breaks for the harm that people felt from the video and the words that were used. And these are so young, these are young people, right? And I hope as a community, we can, as Dr. Carroll and Member Russ, and he said, and as Superintendent said, use this opportunity to grow and learn as a community. What work do we need to do? How do we need to help each other? How do we be mindful of the ways we interact with each other? And to really be an anti-racist community, to embrace the hard work of supporting everyone. And for the students too, who are just young and learning and need support and guidance as well. So I look forward to future conversations. I know there's probably lots of community members tonight, and I think that someone asked if there would be opportunities to have questions and conversation. And I think Dr. Carroll, perhaps you and I can brainstorm about a community forum or an opportunity to discuss and learn and ask questions for the community around these issues, as we had hoped to do around restorative justice. So I think that, you know, in the near future, we can work on something so that we have an opportunity to talk to community members about a back and forth around these issues, whether they're based obviously in the schoolwork, but also so that the community and the school committee can receive and get information from the community. So we can in the next week or two look to put something together for people to come and have a conversation and ask questions and have conversations back and forth, and not just sitting here listening to us. So thank you, Superintendent Jett. And please, if the staff needs anything or anyone in the district dealing with these issues themselves, I hope that they know there's support for them, as well as educators and counselors dealing with these issues as well.
So thank you all, and thank you for your comments and your feedback. And it's kind of a perfect segue into the IntelliSpark screener to find out where our students are socially, emotionally. They give us some sort of indicator. And I know I responded to a number of emails. I think there's a campaign out there to possibly have their families not participate in the screener. And I want to say to folks, if this is not one small indicator of why we need to assess where our kids are, all you got to do is turn on the news. You see what happened with a 15-year-old kid in Michigan. You saw what happened in the beginning of the year out in Lawrence. You saw what happened in a middle school in Boston with a principal. You see that students are struggling and trying to get themselves reacclimated into a regular routine and try to normalize or regulate their own emotions and how they deal and handle conflict and misunderstanding. So I sent out 2 emails, and in those emails, we're giving parents advance notice about the screener that we would like to do throughout every grade in the Milton Public Schools. In that email, last Monday before the vacation, and again this week, We gave the examples of the specific questions that will be asked. It doesn't have anything to do with sexuality or mental health per se. However, there's something that could come out of that. I answered a number of questions. We will be responsible for that data. Yes, there's a third party IntelliSpark. They utilize that data. That's who gives us the data back. That's the platform that we're using. That third party organization is bounded by confidentiality as it pertains to student records and information. And then parents, depending on their requests, if they want to know their child's responses, maybe that's something you can reach out to your principal. But as the superintendent of the Milton Public Schools, I am pleading with the community to allow as many students as possible to participate in this screener. It's not a survey, it's a screener that gives us additional information on how we could best implement interventions or supports for our students, whether it's in a grade, whether it's by level or by school. We want to be able to give that information and be with our teachers, with our staff, adjustment counselors, nurses, and support our students. So again, I ask for people's cooperation in trying to do that. People have until Monday, December 6th, if they wish to opt out. It is not mandatory, but we strongly encourage it because we think it's valuable information that we would have. I will reiterate that to some extent in the blog as well. This information is not shared. It's not part of students' permanent records. It's not shared with other parents. If we report out to the community, it will be in an aggregate. I won't come on school committee and talk about any individual student. That goes against everything that we talk about in terms of confidentiality of our students. So again, if you have questions, and I know some people emailed me, the actual questions are embedded in both of those emails in which I sent you as a part of the community. So that's the survey. I also want to highlight that we're coming up on, we have about 3.5 weeks or so before the winter break. There are a lot that's been going on. We were able to, students engage in sports, athletics, clubs. We had a plethora of different after-school clubs and activities at all levels, some academic, some social, some where students could really engage and socialize with their peers, which we think is important. I had a conversation with principals. We're easing our way to try to get back to a little bit more normalcy. We're taking these incremental steps without compromising safety for school. We're following the health metrics in terms of the new variant, which I would use the president's, and I'm not getting political. It's a reason to be concerned. It's not a reason to panic right now. We're going to continue to monitor it. We're going to continue to employ all of our mitigating strategies that we had in place last year and this year. I will be communicating with our custodial staff as well, starting tomorrow. So I'm giving that in advance in terms of how we could do some enhanced cleaning, making sure that we know, because we know now we're moving indoors. We still have our windows cracked during the day. There's air purifiers in every room. The rooftop units are on overnight. There's extensive cleanings has been taking place. Even though we're not required to do 6 feet social distance, we're trying to social distance as much as possible, knowing that we are kind of strained a little bit because we have a growing enrollment. That was not an excuse. We have a growing enrollment and space is tight in all of our schools. We remain open and we're going to continue to do the best that we can. I also want to compliment our custodial staff, our food service staff, and especially our nurses. And I ask for people's patience when they get these calls from the nurses. Again, we cannot predict when a positive case is reported to us. They come in at night, they come in on weekends, they come in during vacations, and our nurses are really exhausting all of their energy working to keep, in addition to their regular workload that they would have before the pandemic. Now you're piling on contact tracing, test and stay, making sure monitoring symptoms. So I ask for people's patience, and I continue to ask for folks to be mindful of your circle or your student's bubble when he or she is at home, and do the morning daily screening. If a student is sick and you have a concern, we do test symptomatic students. So you just got to let us know. And typically that is done hopefully before the school day starts. And so you just have to reach out and let us know. We have a webinar that I would engage in tomorrow with the state, because we do have a Binex now, but you know, like with any medication or with any test kits, there's a shelf life. So there's going to be a webinar tomorrow to talk about how do you replenish those, and some other updates, which I have yet gotten word on what those updates will be, but that is tomorrow at 2:30. If there's something of concern that I need to communicate with the community, I would definitely do that. And then I do want to let folks know there's a couple of things, a grade 8 information night that is coming up. That will be on December 16th, the college information night on December 9th. And I want folks to know, even though we say a college information night, we do have things that are coming down the pipe for those who may have an interest in the trades or going into the military. So this just happens to be a college information night that is shared. There'll be 4 sections that families can rotate through, and we encourage people to participate in that. Something that will uplift your spirits, and next week, the 7th, will be the winter concert. That will take place at the high school. And then the 8th, I do plan to have a coffee hour, a virtual coffee hour. It's very similar to the one I did in September and one I did in October in person. This time I would do it remotely. And again, that's for families to come and ask questions. My hope is people come with an open mind and a willingness to learn what we are doing and I'm willing to learn how we could get better and take your feedback. And my hope is that session could be as positive and productive as possible. And we might leave that meeting agreeing to disagree on some issues. And I might leave that meeting needing to follow up with people and get information. I am willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. And I hope those who attend come with that same mindset. The goal is to be collaborative and work forward in a positive direction. So those are some of the things on the horizon. And so I'm going to yield my time as a district update, and I'll try to put more in there just so we can get through tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Dr. Carroll?
Thank you. I just have one quick clarifying question about the symptomatic Binax Now testing that you just mentioned, Superintendent Jett. So if a family has a student who wakes up with symptoms, from what you just said, it's now okay that they could contact the nurse and bring the student to school to use a school Binax Now test, or should they still stay home and get their own test somehow?
So very good question. I would say you first start off with the screener. We have it online, the daily screener that we ask people to go through. If your child has multiple symptoms, we ask you to keep your child home. We also know that we're in allergy season, we're in flu season, and people sometimes you're common cold. That happens more often this time of year. So if you don't have too many of them, yes, you could notify the nurse and we'll do our best to try to get students screened. Sometimes a student will be in school and start to feel under the weather, and that could be one of the cases. So absolutely. And if for anyone that has any questions about the test and stay, it is on the website, and we encourage people to go to the website because those are live links and they get updated when we have information. Please do not, the screener you could print out, but please do not print out all of the policies, put them on your refrigerator, and never look at the website, because those updates sometimes come and I don't have control over the updates. Sometimes they come from the state. So I just encourage parents and guardians to do that. But great question.
Anyone else have any questions for Superintendent Jett about his district updates? Superintendent Jett, perhaps I don't know how we stand with the vaccination rates for staff and Milton Public School staff, and if we're continuing to track, obviously, the rates for vaccination for older students. And I'm not sure what's happening with the students 5 and up, or 5 and 12, whatever that second category is now. Sorry.
3 times today now.
That's okay.
I do know many students with their parents' support and consent, many students 5 to 11 are now getting their vaccinations, or at least their first shots. And depending on what vaccination they get, Pfizer, Moderna is that 21-day period. I do know some elementary students, I don't say this to alarm people, obviously, you know, younger kids might take to the vaccination a little bit different than the older students, but so more and more of those folks are getting vaccinated. I was hoping to have that report. Unfortunately, we're down a nurse and we had a nurse out. We have a nurse that's out sick, so I can't give you the full report, but I could tell you without a doubt, I have about 5 medical exemptions and I have about 3 or 4 other exemptions. So in total, but for the most part, people are complying. For those who have the exemption, they have to commit to weekly testing. And that weekly testing is given to us. A PCR test is given to the nurse and that's how they say. Now, that's when they're asymptomatic. Now, obviously, whether you're vaccinated or not, if you are positive, you are home, whether you're asymptomatic or not. If yeah. So I will hopefully, if not tomorrow in the blog, I would get it out as soon as possible. It was trickling in because just like with students, it takes time for faculty and staff, but I would venture to guess that we would be close to about, if not 75%, or if not 85%, close to 75% of our faculty and staff who are vaccinated or at least had 1 shot.
Okay, great. And then I'm just thinking, moving forward, as we finish out this school year, this 2021 part of the school year, and we think about, I'm sure Desi will be updating superintendents and districts about any changes they have to mask mandates and things like that. And with new variants and stuff, I'm just thinking to be, thoughtful and wondering what that's all going to look like as we move into January and February, and conversations that the community might have around all of that. So just to be thoughtful and thinking about that as we move forward. I know the new variants are complicating the conversations, but I do know that that'll be something that comes up in January as we get closer to that time.
And thank you very much. That could be something that comes up tomorrow on that 2:30 call with the commissioner and members of his health team. I do know that the commissioner gave a date of January 15th to revisit that. That kind of falls in line with the Milton Public Schools policy of reviewing that policy every 2 months. And we discuss it in the policy subcommittee as well, and we will continue to do that.
Okay. And then just one last thought before we move on to Citizen Speak is that, maybe we have to do a little bit more education in the community about the social emotional screener and what is a screener tool like that and how it's helpful for students actually, mostly, and then for districts to make really valuable decisions about how to invest time, invest resources, and just have additional human resources for people. Maybe we think forward about that as well, so that people don't think of it as something like a survey. A screener is not, and districts that use social emotional screeners, they gather a lot of important information to make good decisions on behalf of students. So I think it's important to think about having, as community members ask us a lot about having their voice being heard, but like Superintendent Jett, your voice can only be heard if you're actively participating in some of it and building trust with us that we're going to do the right things on behalf of students. And I know that for some community members, there isn't that trust, but we're working on that. And I think it's important to know that these things really do benefit students. That's the goal of them. It's really beneficial for students. And to identify where we might need to have more support for students and for teachers and other faculty. Yes, Member White, you might have something since that was your life.
Yeah, well, I just want to also say that if people were to think about the fact that when you take your child to the pediatrician or when you go to your primary care physician these days, they will give you a screener to talk about whether you're feeling safe, whether you're concerned about a relationship at home. I remember when I was taking my son to the pediatrician, I had to leave and go out into the waiting room because they were asking him whether he was, feeling safe at home, if there were any concerns that he had. And I know when I go to my primary care physician, they talk a lot about, for an older person, safe at home. They're asking me if I have food insecurities these days. They're asking me about domestic violence and all these kinds of issues that they never did before, but they're trying to expand, healthcare in many arenas. And so in a very similar way, our children are being asked those kinds of questions at their doctor's offices as are the adults as well.
Well, anyway, I just thought, thinking moving forward about educating people about it in the future, that's all. Something to think about.
If I could just add one comment, you said something that I think is very important, restoring the trust or building the trust or extending that olive branch. In that email, not only was it the email about the screener, it was the questions, it was the newly revised policy. We are trying to give parents as much information as possible and trying to give them reminders as often as possible about that. So hopefully we could reach everyone. So absolutely, and we're committed to that. So thank you.
And I know you are. I know you all are. And I know that people are still really just struggling in general. I was at a meeting today and someone said, I've never met so many tired people as I see right now. And I think that that just goes for everybody. And so I just appreciate everyone who's taking the time to be a part of the process and support the students that way. All right, so thank you, Superintendent Jett, for your updates. We're going to have Citizen Speak now. Citizen Speak will be for 15 minutes. If you'd like to have an opportunity to address the school committee, please raise your hand and you will be promoted. When you address the committee, I ask that you state your name and where you live, that we keep your comments to 3 minutes, that we don't respond to your comments, and we'll take notes and then try to respond to you at a later time. And I just remind you to be gracious in your comments and to not address a specific person in the community. Thank you so much. So if we have our first, I don't know who's promoting people today. Is that you, Sean, or somebody, or someone did?
If Sean's not able to do it, I believe I'm able to do it. And I think the first person is O'Henny.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for your update, Superintendent Jett. A few quick things that I think are important to address in terms of obviously the incident you presented at the top of the hour. The first one is that while we appreciate so much the actions that are taken and the care, and this is clearly something that as a community is grieving us all, I think it's very important, and you said this a few times, that you're going to address with this student and the students involved. And I think we want to re-emphasize what the school committee is trying to do in terms of this is not an issue of a student or these students. This is an issue of education for all students, right? We need to make sure every kid, I mean, the N-word is a difficult word, has a huge legacy, but that legacy must be taught, right? And it must be understood. And if we don't teach that legacy, kids, we're doomed to repeat the same history over and over. So it behooves us as adults to teach our kids. I don't blame kids who don't understand this. I blame a system that does not teach them how to engage this. So that is, so I know you said it's not about demonizing student. I want to be clear, I am not calling for any student to be demonized. I am calling for the school to take direct and clear action in terms of making sure that it is not a student issue, but these students who are every student is taught this. Point number 2 is, while you said be patient, Superintendent Jett, be patient with the response. I'm the parent of one of the Black children who was engaged to make sure there was no retaliation. And so here you have a student who has said something very harmful, and this only came up because some of these Black students confronted that student in the class, the teacher was able to witness it. And we're talking about restorative justice, and it's in fact that confrontation, as Member Carroll mentioned, that enabled the school to engage this. Yet we are so scared of students talking about this. We're so scared. We just and to take students and address the students who you're scared of retaliation, and to leave the student who actually said this just walking around the school. I think that we need to really be clear on what we talk about when we say restorative justice. Restorative justice is not rounding up angry Black students and saying, don't do anything. We're warning you, don't do anything. And I know that was not what was said. And I've had conversations, and I appreciate the efforts of the principals who have clarified with me, but what was said and what was intended, what was received by the students must be clear, which leads to my point, which is, if I was a teacher, I would not know what to do either. If I heard this, we, as Member Carol and Member Denny said, it's in our budget. We've heard about it. We all talk the talk here. We're an anti-racist school district. Where is the beef? Where is the training? Where is the action that we have seen? We are looking for leadership. Where is the leadership on this? A teacher should not be left on their own to solve this. Where is the action? Where is the checklist? What have we seen? Can we see the updates on if this has been implemented? Have people been trained? Because I will tell you, having been the parent of one of the students involved, this was not handled well. And this was not handled, and you know me, I've made it known to everybody. Because you can say nothing's handled, yet the student, to have to hear this from your child and to hear the things that they were telling me, it is disturbing that I feel I'm back in grade school dealing with the race the same way we did it in the 80s, which is completely inappropriate. I shouldn't feel that same way. And so I call on our leader in terms of these issues, Somali Prack-Martins, to step up and show us what has been done here. Because I want to be honest. We push for this, and there's nothing worse than pushing for something and then not seeing the result. And the third thing I would say simply is, Superintendent Jett, you mentioned that there is a reporting line that is open. As I look on the school, I see nothing for racial reporting. And let me clear, I see bully reporting, but because someone calls me the N-word, this is not bullying. You are not bullying me. You are disrespecting literally my person. There's a difference. If this line is for racial incidents and bullying, make it clear. Call it racial incidents. Let's not be afraid to name the name of that which offends. If this is a line for racial incidents and bullying, make it clear. But all I see is bullying here, bullying there. I don't see anything for racial reporting. And if I missed it, I'm welcome to be corrected. I thank you for the pleasure of my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anane, for speaking this evening.
The next person, I think, Tamoria.
Welcome.
Tamoria, are you there? Hi.
Good evening, Tamoria. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you all for having me on to speak. One of the things that I've been concerned about when I hear about these types of incidents is the role of Ms. Prack-Martins in addressing these things. I'm curious as to what her role is as the director of equity when these things come up, because I don't feel that she is very visible in the community. I feel that in this situation that she should actually be on screen with all of you. And I'm struggling to understand why the director of equity wouldn't be present when this is being discussed. It seems that she would have a very large role in this process and would be sharing what her role is in this process, and also what types of actions are being taken in terms of equity, because that is a part of her job, both literally and figuratively. So, it's her role to me, is very important, but I don't feel as though she is a visible person in the community that people can come to when these things happen. How is she integrated into the system as a whole between parents, and the administration, and the community at large? There's a big missing part of the puzzle here. And to me, it leads straight to her because she was hired specifically for this reason. And I have not seen the level of engagement that her salary, quite frankly, which is high, is paying for. She should be front and center here. And I'm very, very disappointed to not see or hear her voice during this discussion.
Thank you, Tamaria. And typically I wouldn't speak on this, but I think it's important that I do. Somali Prax Martin's daughter got into a serious car accident today. So Somali Prax Martin's wasn't present. So I think, and that's only for today. That's why she's not on a call. However, I did communicate with her. She has communicated with Bill Fish. She is planning to work with Bill Fish, into O'Henny's point, not just with the students involved, but the entire Pierce community. It was addressed with the entire 8th grade today. Unfortunately, we were still in the process of dealing with the investigation, following up and communicating, but your points are well taken. Thank you very much, Tamaria and O'Henny. I think that your comments resonate with me a great deal. Thank you both.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear, about the accident, but I just want to quickly say that I'm not just specifically talking about this incident. I'm talking about from her introduction to the community all the way to now. She's been here for a while now. And once again, I'm going to repeat it. Most directors of equity have a very large presence in their school communities. They are seen as the point person to go to for these incidents. There's no question about it when things come up that they are going to be the one sort of leading the charge. And what I'm saying to you all here tonight is I'm looking for the leadership from her. I'm looking for visibility. I'm looking for transparency, and I'm looking for very, very clear plans of action. And I don't hear that from her. And it is very concerning to me as a parent.
Thank you, Tamara, for speaking this evening.
Give me a second. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any other hands raised. And how are we doing on time?
Sorry, Superintendent Jen, I apologize. We're about 5 more minutes, 15 minutes left. Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna unmute O'Henny. I'm not sure if it's just because his hand didn't go down, but
okay. I think he's,
O'Henny?
I think he put his hand down.
Oh, okay. So
right.
At this point in time, I don't see any additional hands up. And again,
right.
I just want to reiterate, I just want to thank the folks that did speak
yes.
for their feedback. Thank
right.
you.
Yes, and as I said, we don't as a school committee comment in the moment, but we are taking notes. And I would like to also remind everyone that Superintendent Jett, obviously this incident occurred over the last day or two, and Superintendent Jett gave us a district update this evening. And so while it is part of his district update, it is not something that was part of, we didn't have something on the agenda to specifically address again some of the comments about the reporting systems and things like that. And so we need to be mindful that people would be upset with us if we didn't say what we were going to talk about and have opportunities to be part of that conversation. So we will definitely add that back to another meeting to address the very important comments from our 2 community members, particularly about the reporting systems and the different categories that we have discussed at a prior meeting. I think that's really important to bring back to a future meeting. And so I thank them both for coming and for speaking this evening. And so thank you very much to the community for coming tonight. All right, thank you. I do not have a chair's report this evening of anything in particular. So I'm going to turn it over to the Finance Subcommittee and Dr. Elaine Carroll and Beverly Ross Denny and Elizabeth White and the superintendents.
I've gone up in the world because I'm Elaine Carroll, which is the
Sorry
two
about
of us
that.
together. But
too many
anyway,
Dr. Carroll, too many Dr. C's in the family.
I know it's hard. So finance, we last met yesterday. We had a presentation from the head nurse, Kimberly Coughlin, who, by the way, has been doing yeoman's work during the pandemic. She came on to that position right at the beginning or just before the pandemic started. And so, yeah, I hope she doesn't regret having taken on the position, but she's doing a great job. She gave us a report as to a request for the budget for FY23 for nursing staff. Her request was 1 full-time nurse and 2 part-time nurses. She gave us great information about comparing nursing staffing in other districts, most of whom had substantially lower enrollments than we do in Milton, and considerably more nursing staff. In other words, they are within guidelines for the ratio of nurses to students, and we are not. She also gave us some valuable information about the kinds of things that we're having a hard time keeping up with, like mandated screening, state mandated screening, and barely keeping up with that, and some things that we could be offering if we had enough nurses to actually do the job, like individualized health plans, which many other districts have, but we don't. We just don't have the staffing for it. The good news is that it looks like, fingers crossed, we could actually get some of that staffing, nursing staff, through the ARPA funds. It's a possibility, so we're hoping that that can be met. Maybe not in our FY23 budget request, but within the ARPA funding. Speaking of which, Assistant Superintendent Dexter gave us an update on where we were with the ARPA requests that we've put in with the select board and with the ESSER funds that will eventually expire in 2024. The CARES Act funds, gone. Those are, wave goodbye to those. Those have all been expended. Now we're fully into ESSER and we're applying for ARPA. And so, yeah, that's where we are. So that's a quick update on the finance meeting from yesterday, the subcommittee meeting from yesterday. The assistant, no, not the assistant superintendent, but the superintendent will give us some information about the FY23 budget before I go into approval of vendor warrants.
So thank you, Dr. Craighead. And just for folks to know, Amy Dexter, Assistant Superintendent of Business, would have done this, but is feeling a little under the weather and lost her voice. And so as opposed to having her type all of this in the chat, I'm going to try to do my best to be in an Assistant Superintendent role of business. Basically, we talked a little bit about a budget summary. I know Amy Dexter is currently working on a salary rollover cost. What that means is taking everybody that we have on faculty and staff right now and rolling them over and taking in consideration steps, lanes, wages, adjustments. And that comes out to approximately $2.5 million. Sounds like a lot, but that's with the 2% COLA, the 2% raise at that time. She is still in the process of trying to compile and review all of this information and trying to match it where we were last year, which is very difficult. As many of you know, we did have CARES Act money, which Dr. Craig had alluded to, and we needed to employ additional people because of the hybrid remote learning model that we were engaged in. Over the course of the last month and a half, we have met with all principals individually and department heads to discuss the FY 2023 budget, the needs that are above and beyond what was funded for the FY 22. The aggregate of what the principals, department heads identified, the needs is approximately $1.9 million. What we plan to do is to take that aggregate list of needs and have it distributed to the principals and department heads, and they're going to start ranking it. They already started that process, and we're going to come together as a team, and we're going to report that ranking out to the school committee, the finance subcommittee first, then the school committee, and then the warrant committee. And then we would definitely be having public meetings, public hearings on the budget to make sure that the community is well informed of what the Milton Public Schools is asking for. One of the things that I do want to identify for the general public, there's not a lot of commercial tax base in the town of Milton. There's not a lot of land. You got the Blue Hills Conservation, you got multiple churches throughout. It's not, I think it was less than 1% or about 1% of the topography in the town of Milton is zoned for business. And so we understand that that's a burden. And it seems like the last time we had an override, and I'm not prepared to talk about that now, but that's something that folks need to start thinking about, because the enrollment is growing. It is not shrinking, it isn't growing. The needs are increasing and the money is scarce. And so that is something that we want to make sure that when we do our presentation, that we share with you a compelling argument of what we need, why we need it, and the data to support that. Once that is approved, again, that will go out to the general public. So that's just a quick budget summary. But again, we will report that out in different tiers as we did last December. It might be in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, depending on the length of priority. But without question, I want to make it very clear. Every single one of those tiers that we're going to be asking for are positions or things that we need to help move the district forward. And so that is the quick update in terms of the budget summary. I know you guys have a copy of that budget summary that was shared with you prior to this meeting.
Okay.
Dr. Carroll.
Thank you. And I'm excited for my first time in the budget cycle, albeit not from finance subcommittee perspective. I do have a quick question, and I guess if Superintendent Jett or Dr. Craig could help me understand sort of where in the process this type of question may be appropriate. It may not be right now, but as I'm looking at these requests, I guess I'm assuming that these are just the kind of raw requests, if you like, that have come in sort of school by school, and that in a subsequent step of the process, as you're laying out, there will be some kind of consideration across the schools. The first thing that jumped out at me looking at this, for example, is that Glover School has requested several different types of professional development funding for that. And I don't see any of the other schools, at least elementary schools, requesting that, which raises a red flag for me. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't proceed with funding for only one of our 4 elementary school faculties to receive important professional development on these topics. So is that the kind of thing that will be addressed and sort of, I'm not trying to say, I think all the schools should get it, not taken away from Glover, just to be clear. But is that the kind of thing that is going to be in this next level of ironing out? That was the one thing I just wanted to ask. And then the other thing is, I think, a rhetorical question also for the next phases, but just at what point will we be able to see the clear alignment from these requests to the goals that we set as a school committee? And of course, you, Superintendent Jett, to help us and to help the community, of course, see like these are the funding the budget needs because these are the goals and this is how these requests will meet these goals. So I apologize if I'm naive and just putting these things out of turn, but I'm not sure the better place to raise them. So no need to respond.
These are really good questions. Superintendent meets with, so we get individual presentations from either individual schools or departments, right? Like special education or nursing, made a presentation to us. So Superintendent Jett meets with the leadership team, and they, as he just said, they begin to rank. And so they, as a collective, will come up with what the priorities for the district are. When they present them to Finance Subcommittee, and when Finance Subcommittee presents them to the full school committee at a meeting, the reasons for those priorities will be made clear. And it's a really good, I don't know that we've specifically done this in the past, but it's a really good idea to link them to goals that we have as a district and to the strategic plan. So I think that's a great idea. Go ahead, James.
No, I was just going to reiterate in that it is a very good question, Dr. Carroll, and that was something else that was highlighted in the quality review. There was some speculation that folks didn't feel like they had a lot of input into the budget, and this is one of those steps to accomplish that, to make sure people's voices are heard. And now, as Dr. Craig had said, we're going to bring it together and we're going to streamline that, prioritize that, and as you just asked, link it to goals.
Member White.
I just want to share that this is like my 5th year on the school committee, 5 years on the finance committee here. And then before that, I was on the warrant committee for 2 cycles, 6 years completing. So very familiar with the budget process. And I think what I want to share is that our principals and even department heads are very aware of the budget process in terms of what's a realistic request and what they, I do think that if you look at their requests for the most part, they are prioritizing what they think they really need. And so they're also realistic to know that we don't usually get everything that we need, but we still advocate strongly for the needs. And, our needs are great. And, we have a growing enrollment. We have, issues to deal with coming through a pandemic with all the changes in the way the kids have learned. And yesterday at finance, one of the things I talked about was connecting those goals that Dr. Carroll asked about to the budget, so that in fact, if we want to say we would like to see significant progress made in students who are not performing up to what we hope they can do, how do we show that in terms of the budget? What do we need to close those achievement gaps? And so one of the things I asked James and the administrative team to do as well is to say, do we need reading specialists? Do we need math coaches? Do we need after school or before school tutoring for more time on task to help catch students up and to give them some extra support? So I would like to see that specific part of the budget presented as well, so that we can say to townspeople, town meeting members, and to the warrant committee, here's the reality of what we need, and here's what our budget would look like. And again, another, just from an override point of view, this town typically needs an override for operational issues probably every 3 years. They try to stretch it out so it's not every 3 years. It's been 5 years. Maybe Amy will remember. I think we haven't had an override in 5 years. So we are heading into this year's budget, I think, not just for the schools, but for other town departments too, where there's going to be a great big gap between what people are asking for and what we're going to be able to fund without an override. So we may be having a override discussion this year, I think.
Yeah, really good points, Betty. I will say that I completely agree with you on both counts. And as to your first one, with the fact that the principals and department heads are very well aware of the budget constraints, et cetera. Even though the final number here, as just for the raw asks, approaches $2 million, it's still a lean ask. I know that sounds crazy, but it is. And we have needed many of the things on this list from before the pandemic, need them even more due to the pandemic, and the, even when COVID and all of its many variants finally sort of dissipates, we will continue to have these needs. So, there's no fluff here. So even I commend the leadership team on figuring out what the priorities are out of all of these absolute priorities that we've seen presented to the Finance Subcommittee. Member Rosemary?
Thanks. I just wanted to chime in also about the goals related to our budget. And we have school committee goals, we have superintendent's goals, and the strategic plan is in the process of being updated. There is a group that is working on a new draft that will be put together prior to our next strategic planning meeting in January. And I think it really is important for Milton Public Schools to be able to tie our goals with our budget. And so I just agree with everything that's been said, but just want to add that echo. Thank you.
Member Rossetti?
I think most of the important points about ensuring that those incremental costs associated with our goals are included. But I think it's also equally important for the people who are in our audience tonight to realize that while we are limited in terms of our current tax base and where we can identify resources to fund this, we do need to have an honest conversation about all possible revenue sources and what type of district we want to be. I'm very concerned that year after year, we reach out to the members of the Milton Public Schools faculty and ask, what do you need to ensure that your students can achieve, that they're healthy, and that they can progress in their academic career and their personal lives. And we are always in a position of limited resources. And unless we have an honest conversation with our town meeting members who are voting during town meeting on our budget about what is important and what our priorities are, we will continue to be unable to accomplish our goals because we haven't allocated the resources necessary. So for all of you who are in attendance tonight, please take these asks or this conversation seriously from the perspective that you will write letters to the Milton Times and you will contact your teacher or your principal and advocate for things for your student. But if we don't have the resources to do it, we're unfortunately going to have to say it's not going to happen this year. And I know that we don't want that for our students. So I hope that you all find ways to be more engaged, whether it's reaching out to your town meeting members, just to make sure that when the time comes for a vote for the resources that our schools need, your voice is heard.
So Dr. Craig had just a few things.
Sure.
So I don't see on this list a cost associated with the two curriculums, with the social studies curriculum and the math curriculum. So will that be part of we need to know the cost regardless of like the.
I think because they haven't been chosen yet, is that
right.
correct?
So just a general sense, right? Like
a placeholder in for one of those two, as far as I recall.
Yeah, we have a placeholder for math, and we have a tentative placeholder potentially for social studies. They were having a meeting this afternoon, the Social Studies Review Committee, but that was running simultaneously with the MPDE job fair that I was attending, along with Janet Sheehan, jockeying back and forth between both. And so we more than likely will have that at the next one. If not, we could definitely email it or discuss that at the next Finance Subcommittee. I know Kim Kaplan and her team have already identified 3 possibilities. And you could use a placeholder of maybe the highest one possibly and work backwards from there. But we definitely will have that.
Okay, that's fine. So just so the rest of the school committee knows, and for to Dr. Carroll's points. So the next time that we meet, which will be in 2 weeks, the budget, we are going to vote the budget. So that will be the budget that we are sending to warrant committee for consideration. So that will be the amount. So I know that you gave the 2.5 million, but what's the actual amount, the 55 million or whatever it is, and what that is? What is that amount for the budget? And then what will the priorities be? What we'll be adding to that from the 1.8 or from all of it? I don't know. And then that's the ask. That's the conversation that we'll have as a school committee the next time. And if there are things that you don't see here, right, on this priority list that you think as a school committee we need to be thinking about prioritizing, then we should probably let finance know that at the next finance meeting.
Yeah, the sooner the better, like yesterday. And
Right, yeah.
I am hoping that exactly what you said, Chair Eberhardt, is the case, that we have it all together and ready to be voted on at our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I am not entirely positive that we will be able to vote at the next meeting.
Okay, so if that's the case, what are the expectations from the warrant committee around when that budget will be available to them? Member White, if you have some insight, that'd be great.
What I wanted to say is I've been watching some of the, I've been participating in some of the joint finance meetings with the select board and also watching some of the select board meetings. The town side, if you will, they are just beginning their budget process. We are actually far ahead of where they are. And I know we typically go first and we go early. So I do think we have some time, given the fact that I don't think that they're just beginning to have those initial meetings to talk about rollover budgets. They're not talking about anything new yet. So I do think that even if we're not ready in 2 weeks, I do think we might have a couple more weeks before we have to get ready to meet with the warrant committee. I don't think they're ready to meet with us, given the fact that they're also right now working on the February winter town meeting that's going to have planning board articles and a school building committee article. So
that's what I was going to say, is I think their time is spent with that. We also won't, well, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I think that if we approve it at our first meeting in January, we will still be ahead of where we need to be.
Okay, sorry, Dr. Carroll, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
So just a clarifying question to understand. So I know that our finance subcommittee meetings are typically cross-posted as full school committee meetings, but will it be the next 2 Tuesdays that it would be appropriate to attend finance as a non-subcommittee member to learn more about this? These will be getting hammered out, I guess, on the next 2 Tuesdays. Is that clear? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The only thing I have asked Charlene Roche to put in on the agenda for the next 2 meetings is the FY23 budget. I mean, it may be that we end up adding smaller things that need to be approved along the way, but that will take up the meetings. Yeah, so those are the ones to attend.
And I think to Dr. Carroll's point that they're cross-posted, so you can attend. They're open meetings, so people can attend, obviously, and listen to the conversations. But I do think, as a school committee member, if there are things, like I said, that you feel are not reflected in these asks, because while Superintendent Jett and the principals are running the district, we have set goals and priorities that we need to figure out as a community to support those initiatives as well. So thank you all for the hard work. I know it's a lot of work, ton of work, more than it's a full-time job when you're writing the budget. That is someone's full-time job, but it's the finance subcommittee's full-time job. So thank you, Dr. Kirkhead. And the last thing that I'm going to ask you, though, is so at our last meeting, they had a meeting at the select board where they approved money that they were going to give us for ARPA funds, right? To some of the requests that we made to them. And I'm assuming that they were approved by the select board, right?
Yes, they were.
And I don't think that we've shared that with the community.
We have not.
Okay. And then we will need to add that to the current budget and reapprove the fiscal year 22 budget to amend that amount of money, yes?
that's coming from ARPA funds, isn't it?
So we don't have to? I have no clue. I'm asking you, but then we need to
You
figure
mean
that out.
we just
No,
approve?
no, Amy, don't approve it. Just up or down, that's fine. So just, Amy's saying no. Okay, just want to make sure. Last year we had to reapprove some money that got added to the budget. And I just want to make sure that we don't have to make an adjustment to the fiscal year 22 budget, grant funded.
That
separate.
was money that came from the town
Right.
that did not
This
come from
doesn't
ARPA
come
that
from
was.
the town.
approved,
This
yeah.
is coming
Okay.
from, you
Okay.
know, another source, so we don't have to do that.
Perfect, thank you.
It's grant money.
But I do think that we need to share with the community those positions and what's happening.
Right, I'm sorry I didn't do that. The select board approved because all of the ARPA funds, all of the ARPA fund proposals are filtered through the select board and they approve them and send them on to be funded. We submitted several things. One was kindergarten aides moving from 0.8 to 1 FTE apiece. So there were 16, I believe. And the select board felt that those were not eligible to be funded through ARPA. We may resubmit on that. But the two things that they did approve were a pre-K to 1, am I correct in that? Behavioral health specialist?
Pre-K to 12, behavioral health,
Pre-K to 12, okay.
SEL specialists. Yep.
That's what happens when I try to write really quickly my notes during the meeting. Okay, so
And
pre-K
a
to 12,
PS middle school guidance counselor and adjustment counselor.
that's what I was about to say.
Sorry.
So that's what's been approved for us through the grant.
Dr. Craighead, because we all in education use acronyms, will you remind us again what ARPA stands for? American Rescue.
American Rescue Plan Act.
Thank you. Yeah. It's part of the federal funding available to communities that is under the jurisdiction of the select board. And many departments in the community requested funds. And we requested, I think, 2 million, something like that, or some large amount of money that we asked for. And this is part of that this part has been approved by the select board. Yes.
Yes, and they're doing it, they called this Project 1.
Mhm.
And so we're going to go through and have Project 2 that we submit and so forth. Oh, and so finally, is that it, Chair Eberhard?
I think that Member White has her hand up.
Oh,
I just wanted to say that money now leaves the select board's, paperwork goes to the Norfolk County because the money's coming from Norfolk County. So I asked the other day, when are we thinking that we might get this money? And no one's really sure because it's a fairly new process. So even though we're asking for this money and it's been initially approved, we may not get it like until February. I don't know, but I hope it comes sooner, but it may be a while before we actually receive it.
that's
Right.
correct. That's a good point.
Dr. Craig, I will reach back out to Superintendents Jett and Dexter, and I will ask as part of the presentation at our next meeting in 2 weeks, that there is a slide or two about the various buckets of money and
Yes.
what was put in all of those monies, because I think, yeah.
Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent Dexter has a really good slide on the ESSER funds going out each year that she presented to Finance Subcommittee yesterday. I think we should share it with the public. It's very clear, very detailed.
Our next meeting. And then the ARPA funds, and thank you very much. That'd be great.
Okay. So the final thing that I have to do is to make a motion to approve vendor warrant number 23 in the amount of $343,965.63, payable on December 2nd, 2021. Do I have a second? Seconded by Member Ross Denny. And this is a roll call vote. Member Eberhard, Chair Eberhard,
Yes, yes.
Dr. Carroll,
Yes.
Member Rosemarin,
Yes.
Member Dennehy.
Danny, yes, sorry.
Oh, Denny, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the town administrator with the last discussion. Jenny, thank you. I'm a yes. Member White.
Abstain.
And an abstention. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for all your hard work, everyone. I know that I look forward to the next conversations in the next few meetings. All right, health and policy we're not going to have tonight. Health and wellness. Member White, do you have an update on health and wellness?
I do. We met on November 19th and there were only 17 members in attendance. We were missing a few. It's a big committee. It's lovely taking minutes for this group with everyone talking. But anyway, that's just me. So we had basically two things that we talked about at length. Jackie Morgan, who's the director of food service, presented the wellness policy that we're going to be looking at this year. And it has to be updated. And there were 6 sections that this policy is divided into. And she's asking all the members of that committee to sign up for a section that includes nutrition education, the USDA standards, physical education, physical activity, wellness promotion and marketing. And we have tentatively a wellness coach that Jackie got a grant for, who's coming in January to work with us to update our wellness policy. And then we reviewed our goals, which are the health and wellness subcommittee goals. And we have 11 goals. I can just highlight a few because I don't think everybody wants to hear about every single one of them. But I'll talk about one of them that I thought was good. Was that one of the goals? Well, let me just back up and say that these goals were established pre-pandemic. And so a lot of them really had to go on hold and really couldn't be worked on during a pandemic. So we're keeping a lot of the same goals, but we just updated them to continue to work on them. So one of the goals that we have been working on is to increase resources and partnerships in the district to improve behavioral health status of the students. And the update on this goal was that each school has a behavioral health team, and those teams meet regularly and they're available to the teachers who can come and talk about a particular student that they have concerns about, and people can collaborate and brainstorm about how to best work with that student with the concerns that they have, reaching out to family members and getting the student into some kind of help that they could use. And additional staff, when we get this opera money, is being hired to meet the increased needs, the behavioral needs of the students right now. Another goal that we are working on is to increase the professional development opportunities regarding trauma-informed schools by offering a social and emotional learning strand for teachers and for staff. And the update on this goal is that Jenny Bellevue got a grant that's a 3-year grant, and they did a training in November, and then they're going to continue doing training to help teach staff about trauma-informed schools. And then another interesting thing that I thought they were talking about was that one of the things that they want to focus on is basically how to offer support, emotional support, and wellness and physical activities for the teachers, because we always talk about trying to take care of the teachers. And I'll tell you something, I mean, even though this committee has a lot of people who are not like faculty or staff, but they're associated with the schools, you know, the faculty that comes to these meetings are really terrific, and they're asked to do a lot, and we ask them to do more. And so one of the things we talked about is what's going on for the staff to help them with their wellness. And so John O'Leary, who's a phys ed teacher at Pierce, talked about the fact that informally, a lot of the teachers come to the weight room and the cardio rooms to do some working out, and they're increasing that more and more. Holly Concannon talked about the idea of offering a weekly Zoom class to the teachers and seeing if she could get funding for that through the MFE. And they were going to do the Zoom yoga classes. And what else? All right. And we also, the really good news is we have two students who have volunteered to be on this committee, and they're both freshmen. And hopefully they will stay on the committee for a while, and they introduced themselves. I don't know if I want to share their names on the school committee. Is that okay to do, James? To share their names? Okay. So I hope I say them right. Giselle Demanchi and Z Fitton. And they were both recruited from the Milton Coalition. They told us that they were advocates for racial and gender equity and for the environment. And they want to work on incorporating an equity goal into the health and wellness goals. All right. And that's my report.
Member Wade, thank you for that update. I loved health and wellness. I was on health and wellness, and I guess like health and wellness serves two purposes. Having the committee and the goals meets the FDA requirements that Jackie Morgan has to meet for her role as the food service director. And so it serves two purposes. And I also think because Ada and I were involved the first time around when the original goals 5 years ago when we were writing the policy. Once you have that written, you need make sure you circle back to policy about the wellness policy, because it is a policy, even though that you are writing it and you're having a wellness person help, you still need to circle back with policy.
Okay, and we also have to have the school committee approve these goals. But
no, right. It's true. Yes. And Dr. Carroll, I don't know if you want to just jump in and the three of us can go back and forth here. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I'm excited to have just joined health and wellness. So I'm kind of getting up to speed on it. And Member White, that was a very thorough, great report. It was an exciting meeting. I think that makes a lot of sense that the revised policy could come to policy subcommittee as a redlined version for the policy subcommittee to discuss and work through that and bring it. So I feel like Member White, we can work on the timing of that. I'm excited to collaborate on that.
Okay.
And the last time we also had the head nurse, it was Margaret Gibbons at the time. She was I don't know if Kim Coughlin comes to that.
She does.
They also were involved in crafting the policy. And I think the students' goals about having equity, and as you think about the trauma-informed professional development, as you think about those pieces in the policy, think about the equity lens, the anti-bias lens, all of those things informing the types of things you want to come out through the policy, right? So that all of those things streamline in the district, moving towards that goal.
And
right?
I forgot to mention a very important thing is that when Laurie Stillman, who was the previous head of the Milton Coalition, she put money in the budget to evaluate the health curriculum. So there is money to look at the Milton Public Schools health curriculum. And Kim Coughlin, even though she's a very busy lady, as everybody knows, she offered to be the point person to work on that revision of the health policy.
Great. So that's wonderful. It sounds like you guys really have a lot of important work ahead of you. And like I said, streamlining it through policy and also having the student voice. I love that piece of health and wellness. That committee is full of community members and staff and students, and it's just a really dynamic group of individuals working towards the health and wellness of the community. So I thank you for the work and I'm so glad that Dr. Carroll joined that committee. That's great. We probably need to update the committee list. I'll tell Charlene. Anything else? Anyone else have any questions for Betty? Dr. No? All right, great. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing more about that. All right, Facilities Advisory Committee report from Member Rosemary.
Yes, thank you. Facilities Advisory Committee met on November 17th. We talked about a number of things. Consolidated Facilities Director Bill Ritchie gave us an update on maintenance and how that's been going this year. And there's been a lot of changes as we've learned more and more about COVID and the requirements for keeping everyone safe in schools. And some of the cleaning that they have been doing has been scaled back based on the science that's telling us that the transmission is not as much from surfaces as it is from aerosol. And so the focus has been on both still cleaning and disinfecting, but also largely, as we've all been hearing, through the ventilation and filtration that we're doing in the schools. And the windows are still kept open, cracks in the buildings to keep the air moving, and the air changing systems are on all night and going full tilt. And we also just wanted to commend our custodial staff for all that they've been through this past 20 months and all they've done for all of us, and their ability to roll with all of the changes as we've learned about COVID and the precautions and all, and their schedules and working around when students were in the building and not in the building, and now back to more of a regular schedule. And we're all very grateful to our custodial staff for all they've done to help us keep the schools open and keeping everyone safe. We also talked about kind of circling back about planning for additional space. And as you all recall, the short-term needs for space, given our overcrowding, is under the auspices of the school committee, and the long-term solution to our space plans, space needs, is taken by the school building committee. So the facilities subcommittee is still looking at, next number of years until we do have a new building, and what will we need to do. And we relooked at the numbers of portable classrooms that we might need as one possible solution. And we discussed how, and this was in the capital request that we've put forward, that in order to plan for portable classrooms being installed in various places around Milton Public Schools campus, we really need to have an architectural engineering studies and designs done so that we can have build those portable units installed properly and according to code, and to be sure that students are able to get to and from the portables easily, and that the space is useful. So that is although we might not need them all at once, the thinking is that it would behoove us to go forward with the plan of getting that engineering study and architectural design in place, so that as we need those, we have a plan from which to draw to install those as time goes on. The other thing, though, that we were looking at as something that we've looked at for many years now is the possibility of circling back to some of our community partners and asking again if there may be spaces available elsewhere in the community for rentals for additional space. And we will go back and circle back with our other institutions, Curry College and churches and Milton Academy, all of the ones that we've gone back to for multiple years now, but things change, and we want to be sure that if there is something available, something has changed, that we might be able to pursue that as an option. And we'll keep you posted about that. And then the last part was we provided a school building committee update, and you all have heard the school building committee update at our last meeting. But one thing I did want to highlight for you all is that, was it last night that the select board met, Betty? Yes. They did they did vote to approve to have 2 articles on the February town meeting warrant for identifying parcels for a school building project that we've been hoping would be able to move forward in February. And so that approval was supported by, I believe it was unanimous, except for one select board member who had to abstain. But that's exciting, and there's a lot of work to do to educate the community about what it is that we want to do and build support for that in just a couple of months. So that's exciting. And then the last piece is, I think I may have mentioned to you all about the video that we're working on and to communicate with the community to help them understand what's really going on in the schools in terms of the overcrowding and how we've accommodated the overcrowding, the changes that have taken place in our buildings in the past number of years that you can't really see from the outside. And especially with COVID, it's not something that we could bring people in for tours to see. So we've gone into all of our elementary schools now. We just finished filming today at Cunningham and Collicott schools and Pierce Middle School. And we've interviewed all the principals and Superintendent Jett. And so we have a lot of footage now that we're going to be whittling down into a brief video to help tell the story of what's going on with overcrowding in our schools. So that's my report. Mm-hmm. Any questions, comments? Dr. Craighead?
Thank you for that report, Ada. It's very good news about the 2 articles in the warrant for February. And as much as I wish we didn't have to spend the money for portable classrooms, given the lag time between where we are now and when the school may be built, I think we're going to need them. I just wanted to say that I forgot to mention in my finance report that we approved the adjusted capital request from facilities, from Bill Ritchie and facilities for an additional $150,000 capital request to make more changes in the schools now, taking away some lab spaces, et cetera, to make for more classrooms before we can actually get portable classrooms and so forth. So I thought we had taken every last space, but apparently not. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Rosemarin, just thank you. Wow, that's exciting about the 2 warrant articles. Can you briefly, just to remind everyone who is watching this evening, what those two articles are in pertaining to the school building project?
Sure, I'll try.
Just briefly.
There, yeah. There are two parcels between on either side of Guile Road as you're coming up from Blue Hills Parkway up towards the high school. The one on the south is the parcel that we are interested in for a school building, and the one on the north side is designated as land for active recreation. And what we are, the first article is looking to swap those so that the land on the south side, which is currently designated as conservation land, would be swapped with the active recreation land. And that article has to be approved by 2/3 of town meeting, and then needs to go to the legislature and needs to be approved by 2/3 of the legislature as well. And so it's one of the reasons we were eager to get into the February warrant so that we have time then to go to the legislature before the end of this legislative season. So that is the first article. And then the second article is only a town article. It doesn't need to go to the legislature, but it's just to change the designation after that swap from land for active recreation to land for school purposes.
Okay. Okay, that's great. I think, like you said, there's lots of work to be done. And I guess we'll get ourselves together and thinking about that for February, which we hear before you know it. Looking forward to that though, and being there when we open the new school.
Yes, and I just want to also thank Select Board Member Mike Zulis and Town Council Kevin Freytag, who have really been working hard on this on our behalf, and will continue. And Mike Zulis represents the Select Board on the School Building Committee, and they, along with Sean O'Rourke and Member White, who was at last night's meeting as well, really came together to support this, and it's very, very good news.
And I'm sure Member Rosemary, that will I know there'll be work to be done in having some more forums and conversations with the community, the surrounding neighborhoods, but also other community members who will be interested in understanding the process as it moves forward.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Starting in January.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Because I know some community members have questions about that. Thank you so much for all your work. Excellent. All right. I think we have approval of minutes from our November 3rd meeting, which is the minutes that we did not approve the last time. Am I remembering things correctly? Okay. I know that they sent the minutes, and I am hoping. Does anyone? All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes, and then we can have a conversation.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Craighead. Okay. Does anyone have any additional comments or questions about the changes? I know that Maureen had asked us about the changes we asked for. I'm making sure that it is correct as it is now. Is it?
Yes, I'm trying to find it again, but
I know, so am I.
remember
That's
from
why.
reading it earlier today that it is, and I'm looking at it now, and yes, the
I thought so.
issue
but-
from last time was resolved, so looks fine
Okay.
to me. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought so, but I just wanted to double check because it feels like that was a long time ago when it wasn't really that long ago. All right, so this will be a roll call vote. The motion to approve the minutes was made and seconded. Member Rossini.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
Dr. Craighead.
Yes.
Member Rosemary.
Yes.
Member White.
Yes.
And Margaret Eberhardt, yes. Thank you very much. And thank you to Maureen for making those adjustments. All right, old business. I don't think, do we have any old business that we wanted to attend to right now? I don't think so. All right, so next meeting agenda items will be many. So our next meeting is December 15th. On that calendar currently is the budget, the presentation of the district performance by VVU. That's a lot. We'll also have policy, and we'll have health and wellness. I don't know that we'll have health and wellness, but we'll have policy. Oh, and curriculum, the new advisory committee update we'll have. I'm so excited to hear about that. Anything else will there be Member Rosmarin, something from any of your building committee work?
I'm not sure.
You'll let me know then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that'll be a busy meeting, but we might not approve the budget, is what you're saying, Dr. Craighead? But we are going to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, we will at least have an update on where we are and whether, and probably the fact that we will bring it in January for a vote.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that'll give everyone more time to be participating in the process. Anything else, Superintendent Jett, Sheehan or Dexter, about the next meeting on the 15th?
Nothing other than, like you said, voting the budget. If we we wanted that list of funding sources that I think Dr. Craig had alluded to, that Amy Dexter presented yesterday. We could definitely share something like that, whether the budget is fully drafted or not.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because we did have a town meeting member ask us about that at the October, I think it was October town meeting. And that would be, I think, helpful just as an update for the whole community. All right, so that'll be a busy meeting, but lots of good work ahead. Any other questions or comments for this evening? No, I want to thank you all for this evening. I want to thank the community members who came out tonight and spoke, and I look forward to further conversations and moving the district forward in these very important areas. And perhaps having a forum or two, Dr. Carroll, in the near future. I think that would be really helpful to see, to have more community voice and conversation around these issues. So with that, I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right, we can just have a show of hands for the adjournment. I think we're fine. We're good. I wish you all a peaceful evening and happy Hanukkah again to those celebrating, and we'll see you next time.